Hi there and welcome back to another video of jPlay. I'm Marcus and today I want to preview some turns of Trickerion, Legends of Illusion that recently started on Kickstarter. So keep in mind that the underlying version is a prototype, even though I think most of the components look really very nice already. And I have to admit that I saw the prototype in Essen last October and was really flashed. You really cannot believe it. Cool artwork, awesome and pretty unique theme, and absolute amazing presentation. So the presenters were actually dressed in Victorian aged clothing, so absolutely cool. So I reached out to Victor, one of the designers, and really basically begged him to get a preview copy. And guess what? He kindly agreed. In the meantime, I played some sessions and right now I want to show you some demo turns to demonstrate the core mechanics here. So I will not conduct a full playthrough or a complete round or something like that. Really, I want to dive into the rooms. I will demonstrate some of the actions and give you a little bit overview of how this game actually works. In Trickerion, the players represent various illusionists in the Victorian-style town Megoria, who compete to become the successor of the most famous illusionist of all times, the great Dalgard, who apparently disappeared for quite a long time and, surprisingly returned to crown the successor and provide him the legendary Trickerion stone. Sounds nice, huh? So, you have 6 to 7 rounds or weeks to gain the most fame points, mainly through performances by the end of each week, to get the most famous illusionist of all times. Why 6 or 7 rounds? Good question. Well, there is a basic mode and the Dark Alley mode, which is basically the advanced game that provides an additional locations and various other changes to the basic game. Even though Trickerion is a worker placement game at its heart, it's relatively complex and very deep. So don't expect a full rules primer here and also not a playthrough, but I think I already mentioned that before. It's really tough enough to make decisions for yourself, so playing this for several players at the same time is really pretty challenging. This is the setup for a 3-player game, which really seems to be the sweet spot for this game. And yes, you really need a lot of space on your table to set it up for 3 or even 4 players. It's also very nice with just 2 players, but really can take quite long with all 4 players because you really have to think a lot to make things right. But still, it's very enjoyable with all possible setup. That's really important to mention. Each player grabs himself a workshop, which is basically his player board. He's allowed to take one of the 3 available specialists, such as the pretty assistant, the engineer or the manager. Each player will get one character poster, which depicts him or her, of course, throughout the game. And here are already 2 variants. A basic poster that shows no special ability, or this advanced poster that we have here that provides a unique ability like the Mechanica here, which can empower one apprentice with an additional action point once per round. Once the characters have been assigned, each player is allowed to take one basic trick of the character's favorite trick category. So the Mechanica will take a trick card with a corresponding symbol like this one here. You can also grab some starting resources and of course you will try to get components that are matching your first trick's requirements. You're allowed to stack the same resources on a single space of your workshop. And by the way, you find those requirements on each trick card, somewhere here on the right. So this linking rings trick, for example, requires 2 metal components. And that's the reason why I decided to go with 2 metal components for the Mechanica's starting components. Let's assume the Mechanica decides to start the game with a pretty assistant who provides him an additional apprentice. And guess what? He even works for free here. Yeah, I guess she has really nice eyes, I suppose. And of course, you get an additional worker for the pretty assistant directly as from the start. If you would decide to take the engineer as your starting specialist, he would provide you an extra trick, basic trick, and this can come from any category, whereas the manager comes with an additional basic resource. And speaking of components, there are basic, medium and expensive components, which you can distinguish by the background color. In a bad lighting situation, it can be tough to prefer between the medium and the very expensive components at times, but I think that's really okay. Maybe the final components will be clearer in that perspective. Apart from the components and all the other stuff, each player starts the game with some money, of course. The exact amount of money is depending on the starting player order, and you also get a Trickerion shard, which is worth 1 victory point by the end of the game. And of course, you can spend it to get some more action points and other stuff if you're playing with some of the advanced rules, but I think I will cover those a little bit later. Determine the starting player order and bring the little posters in the appropriate order with the first player on top, like this for example. The starting player starts the game with 1 fame, the second player with 2 fame points, and so on. The same applies for the starting money, with the first player only getting 1 extra dollar, whereas the second player would gain 2 extra dollars, and so on. I guess you get the picture. Of course, you need to decide beforehand if you want to play with the Dark Alley module or not, but I really highly recommend it, because the prophecies here on the right and the special assignment cards on the bottom bring a lot of flavor and additional twist to the game. In a 3-player game, most of the locations only provide 3 spots to place your workers, but I cover that in more detail later, I guess. One thing that you have to do at the start of each round or each week is to roll the dice for the downtown location. So let's do that real quick. So here we have an X and an engineer, a spiritual trick and an X, and both dice show 3 coins. But now we are basically good to go, so let's move over to our player boards and start planning our characters. In order to place your characters, such as our magician, our starting apprentice, the pretty assistant and her little slave, we have to assign them to the various locations. And that's where the assignment cards come into play. And of course, each player starts the game with the same set of cards. So if you want to send your magician to downtown, you put the corresponding assignment card on the appropriate spot under his token, but of course you do that face down. You do that for all of your characters, and once everyone has done the same, everyone reveals their assignment cards, and then it's time to actually place your workers. Finally, next in the starting player order, each player will place one of his characters to one of the locations he has sent him to. So you have to send your magician to downtown, the pretty assistant to the theater, this apprentice to the workshop, you can see that here, and this apprentice would go to the market row. And I guess now it would be a good time to have a look at the action point system of Trickerion. You might notice that all your characters have a little number on the bottom, which represents their basic action points. If you manage to place your character on the first spot, like we did here for the magician, you get 2 additional action points, which you can see printed on the board next to the character here. If you decide to spend a Trickerion shard, so let's do that here, you can get another action point. So in this example, you would have 6 in total. The main actions in downtown normally all cost 3 action points. So you can decide to hire a character, you can learn a new trick, or take some money from the bank. So with 6 action points, which we would have here, you could do 2 of the above actions, and you would do them immediately when you actually place your character. So let's say you want to grab some money. You spend 3 virtual action points and you have to remember them yourself, but I think your other players will help you reminding you. You decide for one of the dice available that does not show an X and take the appropriate amount of money. So I guess in this example we would go for 3 coins. The dice go up until 6, I think. Afterwards you would turn one of the dice that you are choosing actually to its X side. So it's actually no longer available for other players. Luckily, there is a way to change the result of a die by spending 1 or 2 action points. So for 1 action point, you can simply reroll 1 die and hope for a better result. And for 2 points, you can even choose the result of 1 die. In this case, you can really first change the result, and with the remaining action points, you can still trigger the action. And it's actually basically the same with the in location, where you can hire a new character, one that is depicted on one of those dice, of course. So in this example, this die is right now pretty worthless, whereas this die would provide you an engineer specialist. Here you can actually learn the new trick, also depending on the available dice. But you can always freely choose a trick from your favorite category with any symbol other than an X. Really, an X is an X. Well, some of those dice show the any result, so in this case I could really choose any one of the 4 categories in this game. And you can see it here, so there are mechanical tricks, spiritual tricks, escape tricks, and last but not least, some optical tricks. Let's assume the red player has sent his apprentice to Market Bureau, where you can buy additional components for your tricks. Each game starts with 4 basic components on the left hand side here, and those are the available resources for the very first round. Of course, the action point system is the same as in Downtown, so the first player to go there gets a bonus of 2 action points. For each component you want to buy, you have to spend an action point and the appropriate amount of money. If you need a component that is currently not available, you have basically 2 options. You can spend 1 action points to order it, place it at one of the 3 order spots, and then it will be available as of the next round, where it will replace another component here on the left. Or you can spend 3 action points to perform a quick order. So you can place the component on the quick order space if it's empty, but then you still need at least 1 additional action points to actually buy it. If you think $2 or $3 for components are way too heavy, you can spend 1 action point to use the bargain action that reduces the price of the medium or expensive components by 1. Of course, you always have to pay at least $1 per component. In order to perform your tricks, you have to prepare them in your workshop, of course. So you have to send 1 character to your workshop and use the prepare trick action. The amount of action points required to prepare this trick is shown on each trick card, but the basic tricks only need 1 action point. At least I think so. So let's say we send our apprentice to the workshop. We place him on one of the 2 slots there, and then we can activate the prepare trick action. We decide which trick to prepare, but of course we have to have the right amount of components in our workshop for this trick as well. In this case, that's not a problem. This is our starting trick, the linking rings. We have 2 metal components, and the linking rings exactly require 2 of those. And as we meet the trick's requirement, we assign a color, possibly a spade for this trick, which we can put on the right hand side of the trick, and then we check how many trick tokens we are allowed to place on the left hand side. In this case, this would be 2 of those, so you see 2 outlines here. This determines how often we are allowed to perform the trick before we have to prepare it again. And I guess now it would be a good time to go over to the theater to show how things work there. For once, you see 4 days where it's possible to do a show, from Thursday to Sunday. If one of your characters is present on a Thursday, you get 1 fame point and $1 less for each of your trick tokens that will be performed this week. Whereas you gain an additional fame point and an additional $1 if you come in on a Sunday. It's a bit more complicated than that, but I won't dive into that in detail in this preview. Let's say we send our pretty assistant to the theater. Next we decide for a day, and we can only choose 1 day, and then place the assistant on one of the top 2 slots. So let's do that for Friday in this case. For each action points we spend here, we can set up 1 trick we prepared before, or alternatively, we would be allowed to reschedule a trick we set up before, also by spending 1 action point. If we decided to prepare a trick, we take one of our trick markers that has been prepared before and place it on one spot of the performance card, like this. You have to place them in that way that the category symbol of the trick is facing the circle between the 2 trick slots on the performance cards. As this is a mechanical trick, the little wheel has to be here or here. But there's more to this. If someone, including yourself, places a 2nd or 3rd or 4th trick on a performance card, you can possibly create a link, or even more. For each link you get an additional fame point or dollars and possibly Trickerion shards, though this is a great way to score some extra points or dollars. A link is created wherever 2 matching symbols are adjacent. So 2 wheels in this example. It's also possible to create more than 1 link with 1 placement on some of the more advanced performance cards, by the way. So in this example, the red player who placed or created this link would now get 1 additional fame point, or alternatively $1. And as the Trickerion chart is printed here, both parties that are part of this link would also be allowed to take 1 Trickerion shot. If you want to make sure you will be doing a performance, you have to send your magician to the theater and place him on the appropriate slot. So for example, like this. In this case, you cannot use him or her for the actual action points. You can only use him to score some extra points and dollars for the later performance phase. But before we come to the actual performance phase, we have to check out the dark alley, if you use it. Of course, the same mechanics for the action points do apply in the dark alley as well. But the very cool thing are the special assignment cards. For 1 action point, you can take the top card of any face-up deck and use it in an upcoming round. If you want an additional card, you have to spend 2 additional points for each following or further cards. Those special assignment cards work just like the normal assignment cards, so you can use them to send a character to your location. But those cards provide powerful bonus abilities for some of the actions or that location. So here, for example, if you use this special assignment card, you get 1 extra time. The same would apply here for the market row and so on. But there are also very mean special assignment cards like this sabotage here. After you prepare the trick, you may remove 1 marker from an opponent's trick. That trick must have a lower or equal fame threshold than the one you prepared with this action. So this is really bringing some lot of backstabbing to the game. You can also spend an action point to change the order of the upcoming prophecies here. But I guess I will not explain those in detail, but usually there's 1 active prophecy that will change the rules within the given game round a little bit. So the active prophecy for this round says whenever you get a Trickerion chart, you get a second one. When all players have placed their characters or passed, it's time to check if there will be a performance. Going from left to right, so from Thursday to Sunday, each magician present can choose a performance card to perform. And it's important to mention that this card can show tricks from other magicians as well, and all tricks present will grant the appropriate yields to their owner. Just think of it as a guest performance or so. The yield of each trick is mentioned on the appropriate trick card itself. So each trick marker from this linking ring here is worth 0 fame points, but 2 money. Sometimes those tricks also provide 1 or more Trickerion shots. And of course, the more advanced tricks like this shattered mirror here with fame threshold of 16, so you can only learn or prepare it if you have at least 16 fame points, provides you 5 fame points and 3 coins for each performance. But coming back to this example here, in this case we would perform this performance in Riverside Theater, which means the blue spade trick and the red spade trick would be performed now, and red would be the actual performer. So blue would get the yield for the linking rings, which we just showed, so that's 0 fame points and 2 coins, whereas the red player performed the Chinese sticks and would get 1 fame points and 2 coins. And now it would be time to reward the performing magician. For each link on the performance card, he and only he gets 1 fame point. If the pretty assistant was also present that day, he gets 2 more points. The manager organizes 2 extra dollars, and the engineer would give you another Trickerion stone. Of course, keep in mind there can be only 2 assistants present on any given performance day. And that's basically the end of a single game round of Trickerion. You move the round marker 1 space ahead, you have to pay your assistants you actually activated this round, and the cost is printed beside the slot for the token, so the pretty assistant would cost you $2 now. You send all your characters back to the workshop to their appropriate slots. You take the assignment cards back to your hand. If you used a special assignment card, this will be discarded, of course. You replace any components with components that have been ordered during the previous round. So in this case, you would replace the wooden component with a saw component or the tool component here. And this is really important when you order those components. You really have to think ahead which component you might need in a later round. So you should only do that if you have enough wood already, or if you would say, I don't need wood for my tricks in this case. And at start of round 2, you would throw the dice again. And this goes on until round 6 or 7. Again, depending on the mode of play you have chosen. And after the final round you perform a final scoring for any shards, money, assistance and special assignment cards. And this final scoring is depicted on each player board or workshop. And whoever has the most fame will be the successor of Dalgard. And of course he will actually win this game of Trickerion. Even though I showed you most of the mechanics of this game, there is still so much more to it. Trickerion is a very deep brain twister that really encourages you to think some steps ahead. Should I order those components to possibly learn a more sophisticated trick? Do I need money now, or should I focus on special assignment cards? Which performance day should I reserve to make sure that I get the most amount of fame points, but still will I be able to choose my performance card? Where should I place my trick tokens in order to score some extra points, but also avoid giving other players the opportunity to do the same? Should I start with a pretty assistant or the manager? Do I need more workers, or do I want to start with better tricks? You see, you have really a lot to decide in this one. Apart from that you get an absolutely beautiful game with so nice artwork and components, and here you only saw the prototypes. The rules are basically finished, so it really seems well balanced. Personally, I would really recommend the game for 3 players, but I also played it with just 2 players quite often and still loved it very much. Again, this is really a great game that is surprisingly polished for a Kickstarter game. This is really a job well done, and no, I'm not getting paid to say this. Hope you enjoyed my little preview here, and I hope you check out the campaign. Of course, you will find a link to it in the description of this video, and then hope to see you soon in one of my next videos. Until then, bye bye.